Welcome back, everyone. I'm Michael Regan, and this is another episode of Building Bigger Lives. I'm here today along with my co-host, Kathryn Peterson, and we are very excited to unpack a very tactical topic with you. But before I spend too much time setting that up, let me bring in my favorite co-host, Kathryn Peterson. Good to see you today, Kathryn.
Thanks, Michael. Always good to be here. And I feel like we're now getting into our groove after enough episodes. So it's getting easier and more fun. So today we're going to talk a little bit about delegation and the 5 levels of delegation, which some people might have heard of, and I hadn't until you introduced the topic maybe 5-ish years ago at a round table. And so I'm excited to kind of dive into these 5 levels, talk through it, how teams can utilize it for their group. And I think it's also applicable to people who, let's say, have anybody that helps them out in their life or anybody that helps them out like in an office setting. So I think it can, or somebody who gets stuff delegated to them. So I think this is a super applicable topic to almost everybody. So let's get it rolling. Go for it.
All right, so I think if I look at this topic, delegation comes up almost always. I mean, I can't think of a coaching engagement where at some point we're not talking about delegation in the context of a team. And I introduced the concept of the 5 levels of delegation after reading a book by Michael Hyatt called Free to Focus. And while I'm not here to, we're not doing a book club episode, we'll unpack that at a later date if we like. But there was a really small and really important chapter in that book in looking at different ways in which we could create better focus that really stood out to me. And it was the distinction of the 5 levels of delegation. And I'm going to admit, before I read this, I probably, like most people, think delegation feels very one level. Like, this is what delegation is. And when I do it, or offer it, it should be really clear. And once we broke these 5 down, I realized not so clear, not so evident, and really important to put some definition on these. So if we may, Kathryn, I'd love to unpack those 5, and then maybe we can talk through some examples of each one. Does that sound fair?
That sounds perfect. Let's go into that first level.
All right. So typically speaking, if I were to define the first level, I would put it really simply. Here's what I need you to do. Just do it the way I want you to do it. That would be level 1. There's a lot of descriptors we could put around that, but that's the cleanest and simplest way I could put it is when I have a task that I need you to do, and I just need you to do it the way I want you to do it, that's level 1 delegation. The distinction between level 1 and level 2 is when I ask you to do something. So same thing, this is just do it my way, but now I'm open to any questions you might have or clarifications that I might need to make. In other words, rather than just telling you what to do and expecting you to say, yes, I'll go do it, I'm now open to the exchange of questions. And this is a nuance that shows up quite a bit in teams. And if one person is wired one way and the other, and they're not clear, tension will exist immediately. If one person expects to clarify things and the other person doesn't want to do that, that's frustrating to them. So that's level 2, just do it my way. But do you have any questions? Could we clarify? Level 3, I would say, moves up from just do it my way to, look, here's the result I need. Do you have any suggestions of how we could get this done? So now it's more focused on the end result rather than the steps or the process. Just do it my way is I've done it this way. I want you to just repeat my way. Versus here's the result I want is I'm open to your suggestions. Maybe you've got a good idea. Maybe, frankly, you'll find a way to do it better than I would have done it. So offer me some suggestions and we can discuss those. So level 4 then takes that concept another step and says, look, here's the result I lead, but we don't need to discuss it. You decide how to do it. I'm literally handing you the keys to the process. Just get me the result I need. And maybe when you get the result, we can review the result, but I don't really need to know what your plan is or how you do it. I just trust you'll figure it all out. So here's the result I need. You decide how to do it. Level 5 is really the ultimate level of delegation, which is, look, Here's what I need. Do it your way. And I don't even need to hear about it again. We don't need to review it. The minute this leaves our exchange, I trust you'll get the result and I won't even second guess it. We won't review it. It'll just get done exactly the way you do it. Those are the 5 levels of delegation. So I guess my first question to you would be, can you see some distinctions between those levels?
Oh, heck yeah. I do see distinctions between them. For some reason, what came to my brain was for the first couple, let's say it's a restaurant, like a chain restaurant that does the same thing over and over. They have a manual, and every single time they make a hamburger, they do it exactly the same. No questions. It's just here's what it is. And I think that's a good place where that would work well. Now, I think that most things don't operate that way. And there's obviously, even if you're making people do it exactly like you would do it, you would say, hey, do you have any questions? So I think that that's probably much more common than you're just going to always do it my way. Are there any other examples you can think of those first two?
Yeah, so I like where you went with that. And I think the phrase most people are familiar with is level 1, just do it my way. Just do it exactly the way I do it. Don't ask any questions, don't deviate. That's often called the micromanager. That's the person who doesn't want to give away any of their trust for some reason. Either they have a trust issue that prevents them from being able to delegate at a higher level, or trust hasn't been established with that person. It's a new relationship. So it's not always a dysfunctional level of micromanagement. Maybe you'd say, like, on the first day your employee starts, you can be really sweet about it and have a great attitude. But the idea is, hey, look, today's not a day to ask questions. Today's just the day to do things exactly the way I tell you. And we're going to pick up on as many things as we can. And then later there'll be some time where I'll want to discuss your questions, and that would be us moving to level 2. So if you heard the just do it my way, and that's where you tend to think, yeah, that's my level of delegation. I love that level. You're probably micromanaging,
Right.
and you're really not optimizing delegation at its highest level. You're really just bossing people around and telling them what to do, and honestly not giving them any satisfaction of contributing at all to that. They're literally just a worker bee. And again, there's probably, you asked for some examples. There are some good examples of that where, yeah, if I'm booking a reservation at a hotel, this is the date I need, this is the room I need, it's okay to expect that that's what I get. If that's the restaurant I'm trying to book that reservation in, same thing. But that's not usually the exchange we want to keep in a team environment for very long. So I think your example of at a restaurant is a good one, because most people can see where that would make sense in those type of relationships. But again, those don't tend to be very high level personal relationships. So if you're stuck on level 1, I'd say let's explore level 2.
That's right. Well, and I almost think the first two levels are pretty micromanagement, where do it exactly like this. Do you have any questions to help you figure out how exactly I want it done? Is almost how I'm reading that. So I would say the first two, but there's obviously this clear focus on the result or the process. And when you focus in on the result, I think that's a big change between number 2 and number 3 is that focus change. So I think that's probably the biggest mind twist for people who are stuck in those first two to get out of that is focusing on the end instead of the middle or the beginning.
Yeah, I think you make a great point there. And while the distinction between level 1 and level 2 may be slight, the point is it gives someone at level 1 a goal to level up. Like, can I give them permission to clarify anything and ask questions? Because if I'm doing that, I'm lowering the guard a little to be able
Yeah.
to let them into the situation. But your point is well taken. Once we've moved to level 3, I'm now less focused on do it my way and more focused on the end result. If we reverse the polarity of this. And I think that's in a team environment where a healthy team starts to show up, because
Mhm.
now some trust is evident. If I'm open to an end result I need, but your suggestions on how we get there, we're now collaborating. So I would call this one less micromanagement and more collaboration at level 3. We're truly exchanging ideas on the end result. And at some point, we might not pick your way or my way. We might combine the two together and come up with something that neither
Mhm.
one of us would have done as well on our own. So that's the collaboration level on the team for sure.
Yeah. Yep. I think that so many times great ideas can come from the people who are actually doing the work. I'll tell you in the loan process, there's things I don't know how to do anymore, like pull a flood cert. I would be completely lost in that process. And therefore, I cannot tell somebody how to do it or when they should do it because I'm not involved. And I think that's a good thing. I think that some of this too, that is good to point out, it might be the team as a whole. So you might say, hey, team, you guys figure out the process. This is the result I want. You guys figure it out together. So I think I just want to point out that this doesn't have to be one to one. It could be a group working together to get the result and they figure out how to do it.
Yeah, you're rather naturally moving into that level 4 with that example, because at some point, whether it is one-on-one or a team where we're just exchanging the idea of any suggestions you might have, it can get to a place with a team where you really are able to say, and your flood cert example is a good one. Doesn't that sound terribly exciting? Pulling a flood cert. Gosh, that must be one of the best moments of the day for that person on your team. When the result is what we need, and in this case, let's not make light of that. An underwriter is requiring a certain documentation because that lender is requiring a certain level of certification and verification. And so we need a person to do this, but there could be a result, and you're asking the team, hey, figure that out. You guys figure it
Mhm.
out. Like,
Mhm.
I trust you. You know how to do. I haven't done this in years. You know how to do this. And that's when we move into level 4, because when you're giving them permission to just decide, we're no longer exchanging the ideas as much as
Mhm.
this is maybe what people dream of in delegation, is getting to a place where I can just tell you the result and you guys figure it all out. And then just let me know. Let me know what you came up with. I'd love to
Mhm.
know how you got there. I'd love to know
Mhm.
what the steps were. It's a nice, healthy learning exchange, and so level 4 is really at some level of this exchange. The dream that most people have is, let me get to a place where I can hand things off, and I've got wonderful people who just take it and run with it.
Mhm.
That's probably level 4.
Yeah, and I think that a good example of a result is like in lending, happy client, close on time, 5-star review, right? And they'll send us referrals, right? So do we get the client to closing in a happy way? That's a result. It doesn't have to be the flood cert gets in the file. It can be broader and bigger than that.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the other thing to think about is how am I looking at the result? Because if you look at the result one by one, that's not the overall result. It's, I need the flood cert pulled. You can do it however you want. Well, that's not really giving that full creative freedom that you can get with those higher levels.
Let's pick a different example, because while that one is technically an active one in your process, I think one that most people might understand is, we're hosting an event. Let's play that
Mhm.
scenario out. And in this event, we're going to invite a combination of clients who we love, partners who we love, maybe even some friends. So think of this as like, my team is hosting an appreciation party. It's the holidays, and there are lots of little pieces to go into this process. You can imagine how these 5 levels of delegation might play out in that. There are some things where just do it my way is appropriate, because it's the one or two things that you truly feel ownership over at a super high level. Maybe it's even what you're known for. So if I'm
Mhm.
asking you to help me with it, just do it the way I want to do it. And who knows what that might be? It might be the scenario for the setup at the front of the room, because you're going to be the one on the microphone. So you feel like, I just need it set up this way because this is the way I'm most comfortable. Where just do it my way and let's discuss any questions might look more like, hey, the room, I think it should be set up this way for everybody. But do you guys have any questions or any clarifications on the way I want this room to look? Because that's important to me. Level 3 might be more open to the menu, like, hey, any suggestions? Do we do a buffet? And so you can imagine these scenarios where even in one topic, you could have different levels of delegation in play.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. And why do you think it's important for people to know where they are in the levels of delegation or how they're delegating? Why do you feel like that's important?
Yeah, I love that question because I think in a team environment, when you introduce this and that question comes out, now we can begin to put some real purpose behind this process. Because a process without purpose just feels like, okay, well, that's just a different way to do
Mhm.
things. In my mind, what it does is well, it does a couple of things. One is it increases the level of trust, as I said earlier. But I think at the same time, it also is increasing the level of communication. I think
Mhm.
better communication is happening when we're clear on which level of delegation that we've expected, and the other person is really clear on what that level means. So it means as a team, if you spend a little bit of time talking through these, so this could be a great team meeting, is introduce the five, write them up on the whiteboard so everybody sees them and they're clear, and talk through some great examples in your real estate environment or your mortgage lending environment. Or if you're a small business owner listening, you might have a different environment in which your team would apply these. Once they're clear on what they mean and you start discussing what that looks like, you could get into the why. Why is this important? And what happens when that conversation gets going is teammates start to light up because they feel more empowered to say, oh, I get it why you might treat those things at level 1 or 2. And these other things you give me are more like level 3 or 4. So it's really important that we're clear on which level that we're speaking of. And that, I think those are the two reasons, Kathryn, is more trust and better
Mhm.
communication.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. Absolutely. So, how do you move people through this? You talked a little bit about getting somebody from 1 to 2, but how do you move people up into those result focused levels?
Yeah, I see this. This is a really good question in case someone thinks, oh, well, then if level 4 is kind of the dream version of delegation, then clearly I should be working every task and every person up to level 4. And I would caution them to say that's almost the same problem as getting stuck at level 1. It's just deciding that, oh, well, then I'm just changing the definition of delegation to level 4, and as soon as I can get there, the better. So I got to move them up. Not always true. Some things deserve to be at level 2 for a reason, and some things deserve to be at level 3 for a reason. So, how do you move them up? I think you look at each scenario through the end in mind. If you are the team leader and you're the delegator in this scenario, you should have a clear sense of this is the level I'm trying to get to with this task, but this is the relationship I currently have with this person. And my only goal, wherever we are today, 1, 2, or 3, is to get them to move up one level. If I can get them to move from level 1 to 2 or level 2 to 3, or to put my thumb down so the video doesn't seem to record that, that's really funny. If I can do that, then I'm practicing this process in a very natural way. But I'm not required once we get to 3 to now we have to move to 4. Maybe that task is ideal at level 3. So, how do we move them up? We identify the end result and we set an expectation as a leader that my job is to move you one step at a time by building that trust, increasing that communication until we get to where that task needs to be.
And I'm just going to clarify that you more want to know you can get to level 5 with somebody than having them there all the time, depending on the task. So I think if the trust level is there to get there with different things, then it's okay to flirt with all of them depending on the exact task that's out there.
I'm glad you brought that up because I think I probably petered out at level 4 with this, that's the dream level of delegation, but level 5 does exist. And where I see this in play a lot, and so if micromanagement is at level 1, I'm going to call this macro management at level 5. And what happens at that level is often seen at an executive assistant level. So when I'm working with someone either in the C-suite or in an upper management role, and they have so many channels to manage or so many employees to manage, so many processes that they have an assistant to help them handle the administrative tasks that are required to go with that role so they can stay focused maybe on the people or on the engagement. A lot of level 5 delegation exists in that relationship once that trust is established. So, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because that is a context for that. And
Mhm.
there could be some other examples, even on a small team, where level
Mhm.
5 is appropriate. And so, again, being really clear on why you would want to get to level 5. Is it because you're anxiously just trying to throw this onto somebody else, like take the monkey off my back, I'm putting it on your plate? That might not be appropriate. You might need to slow down and realize, oh,
Mhm.
well, just because you're the boss doesn't mean that you put all the work on everybody else's shoulders and you're not doing a good job of collaborating like we might do at level 3. So don't move too quickly to level 5 just because you want to get rid of a task. Make sure it's a task that it's
Mhm.
ultimately appropriate to have completely released to that person, because you can imagine a scenario where this one comes back to haunt the team. You've set your goal to get everything to level 5. You've finally, sit at your desk every day just pointing at people, telling them, we'll do this, just take it, go. There's no exchange, it's all back to
Mhm.
them. At some point when things go wrong, there were no checks and balances. And then what happens? Now we've got a lot of
Mhm.
blame. Now we've got a lot of excuses. Now we've got a lot of infighting. So just like I talked about trust moving between level 2 and 3, I would say don't move too quickly to level 5 if the task isn't appropriate, because you can also lose trust quickly.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And then you're like, why didn't you do it the way that I would have done it? Then it kind of doesn't really work that way.
To
So
which,
then
if they
if
said
it,
that, wouldn't you feel like, well, then why didn't you tell me that in the first
I
place?
know, right?
And you can see how the tension would exist. So okay to get to level 5, just move there cautiously and methodically, when level 5 is the desired end result.
Mhm. So then how do you course correct if a teammate just isn't getting there or is continuously missing that mark?
Wonderful. And I think it's worth exploring, because sometimes my desire as a team leader is to get things to that magical level 4, but we seem to keep getting stuck at level 3. We're exchanging all of these ideas, but there's some sense that they still want me to make the call, because that's at level 3.
Mm.
If you really paid attention to that one, we're having this exchange, but it's still my desired end result. So I'm going to make the call. I may like your idea. We may go your way, but I'm the decision maker. Where at level 4, remember, that's when it shifts to, hey, you decide how to do it. And I've met those people who they're just not comfortable making that call. And so I'm regularly frustrated
Mm.
that, hey, I gave that to you. Like, I trust you. Just do it. Sometimes that requires an extra level of communication that might feel frustrating to a really driven leader. We've talked about behavioral styles, and when someone has that high D driver style, and they're dealing with someone who might have a high S, and that sensitivity causes them to say, hey, I just want to make sure you're okay with what I'm doing.
Mhm.
Hey, I just want to run this by you. And they feel like, if you have to run everything by me, I might as well, let's just go back to
Yeah.
just do it my
I'll
way,
just
or even
do it.
worse, I'll just do it myself. Yeah, just forget it. I won't even delegate at all. So yeah, when someone gets stuck, I think you have to give yourself permission to say, did I do a great job of setting up that expectation with this task? Did I do a great job of communicating the nuance between level 3 and level 4? And am I really willing to graciously put it back to them to say, hey, I told you, you figure it out, and leave it in a position of trust, not in a position of frustration. So I'd say maybe the real secret sauce to this is, if you're finding yourself as the delegator getting really frustrated at someone stuck
Mhm.
at a level, examine yourself first, because there's a really good chance you didn't set it up really well. Maybe you were moving too quickly. Maybe your hopes were too high. Maybe you have too
Yeah.
much on your plate. It's possible that you set that person up in a position where they couldn't move up a level. Last thought on that: happens from time to time. Maybe someone's ceiling of complexity is lower than you thought it was going to be, and you've hit
Mhm.
their max, you've hit their capability.
Mhm.
And then you really have to decide, can I get enough value and exchange out of the level this person can handle to keep them in a role like I've designed for them? Or is that going to stunt my team in some way and ultimately the results we get? And that's a tough call because that now involves a person, not a task. But that can happen. And I would just say that's a good leading indicator. If you've gone through this process and they just can't move up a level, maybe you have the wrong person in the wrong seat on the bus.
There you go. I think it's also important to ask questions. So it's so often we want to be, hey, here's the answer. And I think slowing down and saying, well, I gave this project to you. What do you think that we should do? Do you want to talk through this so it would make it easier?
Yeah.
Versus just giving the answer. Because I think if we train our employees to ask us questions that they just want an answer to without just making those decisions, so we have to kind of train that muscle on both our end and their end.
Yeah, you bring up a concept that when I'm coaching gets repeated back to me more than any other concept. And so I realize it's one that when I've said it, I don't realize that it's impactful in the way that the recipient does, but it's
Mhm.
this simple phrase. When you want better answers, ask better questions. And that's such a awesome ingredient to almost every problem you have. If you really
Mhm.
think about it, certainly a spirit of empathy is a good ingredient as well. Like try to lower the tenacity and really look at this through someone else's eyes when
Yeah.
possible. But ultimately, if you can ask better questions, you're demonstrating curiosity, you're demonstrating openness, and those are things that always help increase the level of participation. So I think you're absolutely right. The asking better questions is almost always a great idea.
Yes, I think it's that one of the great keys to life. So we'll maybe go through that in a whole other episode. So then what do teams look like when this is fully implemented?
Kind of fun. When you see a team that gets this concept, they embrace it as a team and they practice it and they give themselves permission to maybe introduce the terms, practice them, and then review what they learned from them. They can get to a place where sometimes the language gets really abbreviated in a beautiful way. Hey, Kathryn, I need to get this done. And here's the scenario. And someone might clarify, is that level 2 or level 3? And when they're doing that, they're communicating, you were heard, you were understood, and you were acknowledged. I'm just trying to nail your expectation because
Mhm.
I get it and I want to do it. When I've seen teams get fully functional where they can just say, great, is that level 3 or level 4? That tells me they're living in this concept and they've really learned to clarify those levels, because once that clarification exists, everybody can participate at the
Mhm.
highest level. I mean, there's really no limit on that team's potential. So what do teams look like when this is fully implemented? They're really speaking this language and they're living it out.
I'm going to refer to another episode. They're like the boys in the boat where they are rowing with precision. So,
Great reminder, because we talked about the swing when the boat kind of glides above the water. And that's a great visual for exactly what
mhm.
happens when, at whatever level of delegation, the team gets it and they're able to clarify it. That's exactly right. It's just like the swing and the boys in the boat.
Good, good. Well, I think with that, I'm going to wrap this up. We've talked about the 5 levels of delegation today and implementing that into your team or into your group. And hopefully it's been very helpful, and it has been for me and my team. And I'm excited to hear what you guys are doing to implement this into your own life or into your own work life. Thanks so much, Michael. You always bring the knowledge, and we will see you on the next episode. Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to encourage people that if you get stuck along the way, do add your comments, whether it's on our YouTube channel or contact us directly. Kathryn and I love helping people implement what we're sharing. We don't always have tactical topics, but in this case, I think this is a beautiful one to go try with your team. Be free to fail, because it's going to be hard the first couple times you try it. And if you struggle, reach out to us. We're happy to help you.
Thanks so much.